If you're a fan of documentaries, then you already know these films can hit harder than any Hollywood blockbuster. They dig deep, challenge authority, and sometimes expose secrets that powerful groups would rather stay buried. But when the truth is too raw, too controversial, or just too damning, the response isn't applause. It's censorship. From government takedowns to corporate pressure, and even entire countries banning screenings, these are the documentaries deemed too dangerous for public eyes. Abducted in plain sight. Some documentaries shock you, others disturb you. But Abducted in plain sight leaves you stunned, questioning how something so outrageous could actually happen. The film recounts the true story of the Broberg family from Idaho and their sociopathic neighbor, Robert Berchtold, who preyed on their 12-year-old daughter, Jan. Through interviews with Jan herself, the documentary peels back the layers of manipulation, deception, and misplaced trust. What horrified viewers most wasn't just Berchtold's twisted actions, but how deeply he managed to entangle himself with the entire family, blurring the line between trust and betrayal in terrifying ways. When the film hit Netflix, audiences couldn't stop talking. Social media exploded with disbelief, anger, and frustration over how events unfolded. Abducted in plain sight serves as a disturbing reminder that evil often hides behind a mask of charm, and that even the closest relationships can be twisted into tools of control. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. Few documentaries hit as hard as Dear Zachary. What starts as a deeply personal tribute spirals into one of the most gut-wrenching stories ever captured on film. Director Kurt Kuehne set out to memorialize his murdered best friend, Andrew Bagby, by creating a heartfelt letter to Andrew's unborn son, Zachary. At first, it seems intimate, a story about friendship, grief, and love. But as the film unfolds, it uncovers a shocking story of injustice, how legal loopholes and systemic failures put vulnerable lives at risk. To say more would spoil the devastating twists, but viewers who go in blind will never forget what they see. It's raw, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. Many call it the most emotionally disturbing documentary of all time, not because of gore or crime scene footage, but because of its unbearable truth. Once you've seen it, you'll carry it with you. The Act of Killing. If there's one documentary that redefines the word disturbing, it's The Act of Killing. Directed by Joshua Oppenheimer, the film turns its lens on the mass killings of suspected communists in Indonesia during the 1960s. But instead of just retelling history, it does something shocking. It allows the perpetrators, the killers themselves, to reenact their crimes on camera. These men stage the massacres like movie scenes, complete with costumes and sets, while openly bragging about their methods. Watching them relive the murders with smiles on their faces is haunting beyond words. Slowly, the bravado crumbles, and the horrifying reality seeps through. The film doesn't just tell history, it forces you to stare directly at the psychology of mass violence. Its final scenes are some of the most gut-churning in documentary history, leaving audiences shaken to their core. The Act of Killing isn't just a film, it's an experience you'll never unsee. The Look of Silence. Joshua Oppenheimer's The Look of Silence is one of the most unsettling follow-ups in documentary history. A companion to The Act of Killing, it shifts the focus from perpetrators to survivors of the Indonesian genocide of 1965-66, when hundreds of thousands accused of being communists were slaughtered. At the center of the film is Adi Rukun, an optometrist whose brother was brutally murdered during the genocide. Armed with nothing but questions and the quiet dignity of a grieving sibling, Adi confronts the men who killed his brother. Some laugh nervously, others deny responsibility, and a few double down with chilling pride. What makes the film so controversial is not only its bravery in showing these confrontations, but also its exposure of a society where perpetrators still live freely, often in positions of power. The documentary forces audiences to reckon with the weight of silence, denial, and the unresolved scars of mass violence. The Look of Silence isn't just about justice. It's about the uncomfortable truth that sometimes justice never comes. It's haunting, intimate, and unforgettable, a powerful examination of memory and reconciliation in the shadow of atrocity. Paradise Lost trilogy. Few true crime documentaries carry the weight and longevity of the Paradise Lost trilogy. Beginning in 1996, filmmakers Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky chronicled the case of the West Memphis Three, three teenage outsiders accused of murdering 3 children in Arkansas. The first film, Paradise Lost, The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills, set the tone with its raw, unfiltered look at the trial, including uncensored crime scene footage that shocked audiences. The tagline summed it up perfectly. It's frightening to think they did it. It's terrifying to think they didn't. Over the span of 3 films, released between 1996 and 2011, the series captured not only the evolving case, but also shifting public opinion. What began as a story of 3 presumed killers slowly became a rallying cry against wrongful conviction, with celebrities like Eddie Vedder and Johnny Depp joining the cause. The trilogy is considered a cornerstone of the modern true crime genre. Watching it unfold over decades is haunting, not just because of the crime itself, but because of how prejudice, hysteria, and a flawed system nearly consumed 3 innocent lives. Central Park 5. In 2012, filmmaker Ken Burns, along with Sarah Burns and David McMahon, released The Central Park 5, a powerful documentary about one of America's most infamous miscarriages of justice. It revisits the 1989 case of a white woman brutally assaulted while jogging in Central Park, and the 5 Black and Latino teenagers wrongfully convicted of the crime. The film exposes how police coercion, public hysteria, and a flawed justice system led to their arrests and years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. The documentary makes clear how prejudice and systemic racism shaped not only the investigation, but also the media coverage that vilified the boys before they ever stood trial. The Central Park 5 is more than a retelling. It's a condemnation of how easily the system can fail, especially when race and class come into play. It's haunting because it forces us to ask, if this could happen so publicly, how many similar injustices go unnoticed? The Dissident. After winning an Oscar for his documentary Icarus, director Brian Fogel followed up with an even riskier project, The Dissident. The film investigates the chilling assassination of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi was known worldwide for criticizing Saudi Arabia's oppressive government, and Fogel's documentary reveals the extreme lengths he went to in order to expose the truth. Unsurprisingly, Saudi Arabia banned the film outright. But the censorship didn't stop there. Streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon refused to host it, widely believed to be out of fear of Saudi retaliation. Released in January 2021, The Dissident still found success through video on demand. It broke into the top 10 on iTunes and Apple TV, proving that even when silenced on major platforms, Khashoggi's story still reached audiences determined to hear it. Beyond Utopia. Beyond Utopia is not just a documentary, it's an emotional gauntlet. Premiering at Sundance in January 2023, it went on to win the U.S. Documentary Audience Award before releasing widely later that year. The film captures the dangerous journey of North Koreans attempting to escape one of the world's most secretive regimes. Families risk everything, including the lives of their children, as they cross borders and evade capture. Their fear is palpable, their desperation heartbreaking. Some of the footage is so raw and intimate, it feels almost impossible that cameras were there at all. Beyond Utopia doesn't stop at personal stories. It traces the history of North Korea's descent into authoritarianism, giving context to the present-day horrors. Now streaming on Hulu and Disney+, it's difficult, devastating, and unforgettable. A rare glimpse into a reality that most of the world never sees. Assassins. If you think true crime can't get stranger than fiction, Assassins will prove you wrong. Premiering at Sundance in January 2020 and released in the US in December 2020, the documentary tells the jaw-dropping story of 2 women involved in the 2017 murder of Kim Jong-nam, the estranged half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Here's the twist. The women claimed they had no idea they were committing murder. They believed they were participating in a harmless prank show, when in reality, they had been manipulated into carrying out a brazen political assassination at a Malaysian airport. The film combines court footage, international intrigue, and interviews that reveal just how bizarre and terrifying this case really was. It's polished, precise, and leaves you speechless. The question it asks is chilling. How do ordinary people get turned into pawns in deadly political games? Titicate Follies. In 1967, filmmakers Frederick Wiseman and John Marshall set out to reveal the hidden world of Bridgewater State Hospital for the criminally insane in Massachusetts. What they captured was horrifying. Patients locked in barren cells, denied basic hygiene, bullied, and mocked by staff. Wiseman and Marshall spent just 19 days filming, but what they uncovered was a damning portrait of systemic cruelty. The state government wanted none of it. Officials claimed the filmmakers lacked proper consent, even though patients had agreed, and the hospital superintendent, the legal authority, had signed off. A judge, Harry Callis, ordered the film pulled from circulation and demanded all copies be destroyed. Wiseman fought back. He appealed, and eventually the film was permitted, but only in restricted educational settings. Schools, hospitals, and professionals could see it, but never the general public. The authorities feared the reputational fallout, and for over 20 years, Titicate Follies was hidden away. Only in 1991 did another judge, Andrew Meyer, finally lift the ban. By then, the film had already achieved underground legend status, but its potential to spark real reform had been blunted by decades of censorship. Titicate Follies is a chilling reminder of how censorship can bury uncomfortable truths. If it had reached audiences when first released, it might have forced faster change in how mental patients were treated. Instead, its story proves that silencing the truth delays justice and leaves suffering in the shadows. It's not happening again. Few documentaries have stirred as much controversy as The Bridge. Filmed over the course of a year in 2004, it focuses on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, tragically infamous as one of the world's most common suicide sites. The filmmakers set up cameras aimed at the bridge, capturing not just the haunting scenery, but also multiple people jumping to their deaths. Alongside these devastating moments, the documentary includes interviews with grieving families and friends, piecing together the lives behind the tragedies. The result is gut-wrenching. Some critics called it exploitative, accusing the filmmakers of turning despair into spectacle. Others argued it was an unflinching, necessary confrontation with a taboo subject, suicide. What can't be denied is the film's power. The Bridge forces viewers to see not just the breathtaking beauty of San Francisco's landmark, but also the immense sorrow it holds. It remains one of the most emotionally controversial documentaries ever made. Jenin, Jenin! In 2002, Operation Defensive Shield brought the Israeli Defense Forces into the Palestinian refugee camp of Jenin. For many outside the region, the story was told only through official statements and headlines. But actor-director Mohammed Bakri flipped the lens. His documentary, Jenin, Jenin, gave the microphone directly to Palestinian citizens, letting them describe their experiences in their own words. Israel banned the film in 2003, calling it propaganda. 2 years later, the Supreme Court overturned the ban, briefly freeing the film for screenings. But the legal battles weren't over. In 2016, an Israeli soldier sued Bakri for defamation, alleging the film falsely accused him of looting. By 2021, Bakri lost the case, was ordered to pay damages, and the film was banned once again. Despite the setbacks, Jenin Jenin remains a powerful reminder of why documentaries matter. They can amplify voices that would otherwise be silenced, giving first-hand testimony to events often buried under political narratives. For many, Bakri's film is not just about one camp, it's about the ongoing struggle for the right to be heard. Sweatbox. In 1997, director Roger Allers asked British artist Sting to write music for an upcoming Disney movie called Kingdom of the Sun, which would later become The Emperor's New Groove. Sting agreed, but as part of the deal, he requested that his wife, the documentarian Trudy Styler, be allowed to film a documentary about the movie's production process. Disney thought this would be a fun way to promote the film, expecting a light and entertaining behind-the-scenes look. However, Styler's documentary turned out to be very different from what Disney expected. Instead of focusing on the fun side of filmmaking, she showed the struggles and frustrations the crew faced during the production. In one scene, the crew presents a half-finished version of the movie to 2 executive producers, but the producers aren't happy with it. As a result, hundreds of hours of work were scrapped, and the crew's efforts were dismissed in a harsh way. In another scene, Sting himself is told that the songs he had worked on for weeks were being cut from the movie entirely. The documentary was called Sweatbox, named after the small, hot, and airless studio where the animation crew worked. The film showed the difficult and often demeaning process behind making the movie, but Disney didn't like the documentary at all and decided to scrap it. This added Trudy Styler to the list of creators who had faced the harsh realities of the movie's production process. Instead of releasing the original documentary, Disney put out a heavily edited version that was very different from what Styler had filmed. For almost 10 years, the original documentary was lost, with no one outside of Disney able to see it. But in 2012, the original Sweatbox documentary was leaked online, giving people a rare look at the struggles and challenges the filmmakers faced while working on The Emperor's New Groove. The Man Who Mends Women, The Wrath of Hippocrates. Some documentaries don't just tell a story, they give voice to the silenced. Directed by Belgian filmmaker Thierry Michel, The Man Who Mends Women focuses on Dr. Denis Mukwege, a Congolese gynecologist and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, renowned for treating women who survived during armed conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The film highlights his tireless advocacy for women's rights and the horrors faced by countless victims. But instead of embracing this story of resilience, the Congolese government banned the documentary, claiming it portrayed the country's army in a negative light. The move drew sharp criticism. La Scam, an association of thousands of journalists and filmmakers, condemned the ban, calling it a silencing of truth. Despite his government's opposition, Dr. Mukwege never wavered. He continues to fight for women's rights, standing as a symbol of courage and compassion in a country that tried to silence his story. There's something wrong with Aunt Diane. Some documentaries leave you with more questions than answers, and There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane is one of them. The film unravels the tragic 2009 story of Diane Schuler, a seemingly responsible mother who drove the wrong way on a New York highway, causing a crash that killed 8 people, including herself and several children. Through interviews with family and friends, the documentary explores the contradictions in Diane's life. Some describe her as a loving, dependable woman, while others highlight warning signs that something was deeply wrong. Toxicology reports revealed high alcohol levels and marijuana in her system, but her family has long denied she was intoxicated. The result is an emotionally charged portrait of denial, grief, and mystery. Was Diane hiding a double life? Was the crash a tragic mistake or something darker? The documentary doesn't give clear answers, but it forces viewers to grapple with the painful aftermath of a tragedy that will never fully make sense. Some documentaries shock you, but The Mole Undercover in North Korea is on another level. For 10 years, a retired Danish chef named Ulrik Larsen lived a double life, infiltrating one of the world's most secretive and dangerous regimes. What begins as a bizarre undercover mission spirals into a high-stakes exposé. Larsen works his way into the trust of North Korean operatives, recording hidden meetings that reveal illegal arms deals, secret plots, and the terrifying reality of a government operating in the shadows. The sheer dedication and danger of Larsen's work is almost impossible to believe. He risked not only his own safety, but that of his family, all to expose the darkest secrets of a regime that punishes dissent with death. Watching The Mole feels like living inside a spy thriller, except it's all real. It's tense, jaw-dropping, and utterly unforgettable. By the end, you're left breathless, realizing you've just witnessed one of the boldest undercover operations ever caught on film. Rewind. Rewind is not just a documentary. It's one man's raw, painful confrontation with his own childhood. Directed by Sasha Joseph Neulinger, the film uses old home videos, once innocent, to uncover the truth about the abuse he endured growing up. By literally rewinding the tapes of his childhood, Sasha reveals what was hidden in plain sight. The film begins softly, with interviews of family and friends recalling Sasha as a curious, bright little boy. But then it takes a devastating turn. As Sasha grows older, the cheerful facade gives way to visible distress. The story becomes increasingly heavy, tackling conversations most families can barely whisper, let alone capture on camera. It's difficult to watch, but that's the point. By retracing his trauma step by step, Sasha not only reclaims his story, but forces audiences to confront the ugly reality of abuse. Rewind isn't just about personal pain, it's about the courage to expose it so that others might heal. Ken Loach. In 1969, British director Ken Loach was commissioned to make a documentary about Save the Children. The charity wanted a glowing portrait of its work in England and Africa, and since it was footing the bill, it expected a film that reinforced its good image. But Loach had other ideas. When he traveled to one of the organization's institutions in Kenya, he found disturbing practices. Children were forbidden from speaking their native languages, stripped of cultural identity in the name of education. Back in England, staff came across as cold, condescending, and out of touch, showing little compassion for the kids they were supposed to serve. Instead of delivering a charity highlight reel, Loach exposed flaws that raised serious questions about the group's mission and methods. Save the Children was furious. They demanded the film be banned, refused to pay for production, and a legal battle followed. The eventual compromise? The film was locked away in the British Film Institute's archives, barred from public release until Save the Children gave its blessing. That didn't happen for over 40 years. Only in the 2010s was it finally shown, quietly, at a few universities. The film remains a striking case of biting the hand that feeds you. Loach could have made something safe and promotional. Instead, he told the truth, even when it angered the very organization funding the project. Today, it's remembered as a hidden gem in his career, one that foreshadowed his lifelong reputation as a fearless, uncompromising filmmaker. So, there you have it. Some documentaries that dared to expose the truth, only to be silenced by forces who didn't want their secrets revealed. While some of these films may no longer be easily accessible, their stories still linger in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Whether you agree with their messages or not, one thing is certain. The power of documentary filmmaking is undeniable, no matter how much some might try to keep them hidden.